Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Larry Vorwerk. And Larry, what is the title of your book?
The title of my book is called The Bartholomew Effect, Awakening to Oneness.
Okay, and what's the name of your podcast?
My Facebook group is called just Awakening to Oneness. I also have a Facebook group or a Facebook page that just has my own personal writings and sayings in it. But the Facebook group itself is open to people literally around the world. Anybody that is in the state of trying to awaken to their true selves of who we truly are and how to get there, basically.
How did you get there? How did you get to this point? I mean, I'm sure it was gradual. Was there a sudden experience or what happened to lead you here?
It really started back in about 1980. I'm 70 years old now, and this is about 40 years ago. I think it really started with an affirmation I started to say, which is I wanted to grow at the fastest rate possible and to share that growth with all those that I come in contact with. So
you wanted to grow as fast as possible?
Right.
Like intellectually or spiritually? I mean,
spiritually. And awareness to the answers to all the life questions like who are we, why are we here, where are we going, all those type of things.
Okay.
And how this really kind of got going was I was in a former marriage at that time, and as such, she had issues, and so I started reading a lot of self-help books, psychology books. And that eventually led me into more spiritual books of understanding. And actually, the first book that really got me going was I was in a library one time, and there was only the librarian in the library. And as I was walking down the aisle, this book fell off the shelf, and it was called, it was by Ruth Montgomery about strangers among us. And I read that book, and that led to many other books down the road. And from there, I started having my own personal experiences of out-of-body experiences, spiritual transformative experiences, channeling that I did and have done, even future lives. And I will get into all of that as I get further into this podcast.
The Stranger Among Us, what in it tripped you into this? I mean, I'm not familiar with that book. Is it about spirits or?
Yeah, it's about, this is something that I talk about in my book itself, but basically it is a book about different spiritual souls coming into this earth by trading places with existing souls already on this earth that don't want to have to go through the rebirthing process and the long haul of time of childhood. And what this interests me.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Okay. Basically, it's about souls that trade places with existing souls on this earth. And these are souls that have a mission to accomplish on this earth at this time, but doesn't want to go through the long process of being a baby, a youth, and a young adult.
Is that what people refer to as walk-in?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what a walk-in is. Anyway, at that time, around 1980, for about a month, I had this strong feeling that I was leaving this earth. And it didn't make sense because I had just adopted our second child. And also I had just been promoted at the zoo where I was as a zookeeper and then a zoologist. And I had this strong sense of peace that my life was over and I was going to be moving back home to heaven, or however you want to call that. And it was just a weird, out of ordinary experience that, and this came about the same time that this book that I just described fell off the shelf. And so that really was what started my journey in full force, and it went from there.
So now, all these years later, and what is your feeling about walk-ins and our life here and what everything's about?
Well, yes, I've learned a lot through my own personal experiences, plus also what I have read from many different sources. For about 10 years after that, I just couldn't read enough. I read about a book a week. And since that time, I've read probably everything, over 500 books, everything from quantum mechanics, quantum theory, uh, pyramid powers to UFOs to near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, and many other things like that.
I wish
And,
I could do that. I just can't retain it.
yeah. Well, anyway, what's interesting is once I started reading these books, I started to actually have some of these experiences myself. And the biggest conclusion that I came from all of this is that we aren't, what we're experiencing on this earth is just a dream or an illusion that we created. We are really not our thoughts, but we are consciousness itself. And all consciousness is merged together in what we would call God or source energy. And as such, as this source energy that we are, or consciousness, we have created all of these illusions that we consider as our real lives.
What would you say to somebody say, well, when I smash my thumb in the door, it hurts? How is that an illusion?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. It's not illusion in the sense that we don't feel it. We do feel it. It's a pain for as such. It's just that we get so caught up in these illusions that we think we're separate from everything else. And it is in our separateness belief that we experience things as being real. And this is the key where we can move beyond that belief of separation and starts to experience that oneness that we truly are with all that is. And there are many ways to doing that. Some is through meditation, which most people, or a lot of people have heard about. And that's where you go into that silence and merge back into that source of consciousness, which some call God or source.
Now, what do you mean by oneness? Like, I don't feel oneness with everybody. Like, I'm in my house, my husband's here, my animals, you know what I mean? Like, to feel oneness with the world, I don't. People say, how can you not feel that? You're an NDE. I'm like, I don't know what that feels like.
Well, that's true. And that's a big problem that we have on this earth at this time is very few people feel that oneness, that connection to God or source or all.
Oh, I feel connection to God. I just don't to like everybody in the world or even my neighbors, you know, they're over there. I'm in here. Well, I don't know what they're doing. I don't care.
That is where we have to rise above the illusion of what we consider who people are, because people are not who they appear to be. And what I mean by that, ultimately in a higher vibration, all we are is love itself. And so the key is to drop this illusion of who we view somebody to be as a good person or a bad person, and strive to merge with them in a sense of their love, of their true essence of who they are, which is love consciousness is the best way.
But you know, this day and age, do people do that? And I'm thinking of the Rittenhouse trial right now, you know, like do people, you know, feel, because they're so divided on saying just one issue, one court case, you know?
Yeah, well, that's what brings up an interesting point, because we live in a time right now where we are oppositional toward each other. It doesn't matter if you're talking about political stance that you believe in or race or anything else. And as such, a lot of people are starting to awaken to this understanding of who we truly are, which I just mentioned. And it's only by doing that that we can move beyond the opposition and the feeling of separateness. Actually, things like the COVID virus that came along is just one avenue that helps people to realize that we truly are all in this together. You know, it is only by working together for the good of the whole, as I like to say, that we can truly transform this world and move it into a beautiful world and harmony, a world of harmony and justice. And until enough people come to that realization, they will continue to be this opposition. And the dark side, if you want to call it that, is striving very hard to hang on to the power that they've had for eons of time now.
What do you mean by that? Who's the dark power? When you say that, what are you thinking?
Okay. Yeah, there are souls, let's just say unawakened souls. I mean, we're all of love and light at our true essence, but there are those souls that have been totally caught up in the illusion of separation and are out for their own self-interest, or for their own self-good, so to speak, rejecting and harming others in their way of trying to get what they want personally.
And that is so divided too, because like I may feel like the environmentalists are the dark. Do you know what I mean? And the environmentalists may feel like I'm the dark. You know, it depends on how you view say the pipeline. You know, my husband and I worked on the pipeline. I have only worked one day this year. And so I view environmentalists or whoever it is that's decided to take away our pipeline as the dark side. And so, as does most people who go to the gas pump right now, they consider that the dark side and may not have at the beginning. They might have thought, oh, good, we're going to save the environment. And so it's not, to me, it's just not so clear cut. And so I hear a lot of people, not just you, talking like this. I never get to ask the questions. And so I don't mean to pick on you. I'm just trying to learn because I have these questions when I hear these topics, because what I think is light and dark could be reverse what somebody else thinks is light and dark. They think they're the light and I think they're the dark.
Well, that's true, because I always like to look at the proverbial elephant in the room. And what I mean by that is everybody's looking at the elephant or the world in their own way, from their own perspective, from their own personal experiences. And one person might say, well, you know, this elephant has a long tail, where the other person's now it has a big flappy ear, you know. And both people are right, basically. It's just from your perspective. And that brings up another interesting point that I strive to do, is that we are all one, and yet we are all different aspects of that oneness. And so the more that I can learn from other people, from their perspective, I believe I get a better view of the whole elephant, so to speak. And so the key also is being respectful of other people's beliefs and understanding, because maybe both people have this has truth. It's just that their truth may not be your truth because of your perspective or your experience.
So your book, like, can you kind of walk me through that? Like
Sure.
What you begin talking about and what you explore and what you ultimately conclude?
Yes, it started from back in the 1990s. I started to writing different series. Some was channeling, some was spiritual journaling, some was my what ifs series, where I was talking about, you know, what if everybody loved each other? What would life look like? Examples like that. I had like 25 different segments in that. I had a series of meditations and several other types of series. But then I'll kind of take you through all of this. Back in, I was going through my divorce in the mid 90s. And well, first I'll take back my spiritual transformative experience. And this was back in the about early 90s. One night I went into another state of consciousness, and another soul literally merged with me. And with that experience, it was like I had the illumination and understanding of two souls as one soul. And then another soul merged with those two souls, including myself. And the sense of illumination and wisdom just exponentially multiplied itself. Well, this continued until there was about 12 souls as one individual. And at that point, I had to make a conscious decision to either come back to this reality or else I would lose my physical body because it would have combusted into flames. It was just a knowing that went through me. Well, as you know, I decided to come back or I wouldn't be here right now. But with that experience, I was very moved in the sense that I realized we are so much more than just what our one physical body could contain. And there was a sense of love and expansion that was beyond anything I could put into words. Well, anyway, I never knew who those other souls were until about 9 years later, when I was taking my youngest daughter down to Iowa to be with her mother. We were separated at that time and we were going through our divorce. And on the way down there, all of a sudden I had this internal voice that came to me saying that we were Thomas and we were Peter and we were Paul and we were all these other names. And then I realized, well, if they're talking about the 12 disciples and Paul from of Jesus. And so that way it kind of really shook me up. And at that time I was dating my present wife, Nita, who I've been married to for 25 years now. She was living in the basement of another friend's house at the time. So anyway, when I came back, I went into the house, and before I even got in the door, the owner of the house, who was also psychic and spiritual, came to the front of the stairwell and told me whatever happened. And I had never said anything to her or my wife or to Nita at that time. She said, whatever happened, take it as the truth. And so anyway, then she contacted another friend of hers that was psychic and had said that in a past life 2,000 years ago, I was Bartholomew, one of the disciples of Jesus. And so, well, that kind of shook me up because here I am, a zookeeper at a zoo, just an ordinary man as I saw myself. But anyway, that got me to thinking and start to looking more. And over the next 8-9 years, about 8 or 9 other people came to me telling me at different times in different ways that truly I was Bartholomew 2,000
Are these
years
people
ago.
all inside of a church or organization or spiritual group or?
No, a little bit of everybody. I mean, most of them were spiritual, but they weren't necessarily all going to the same church that we were at the time or anything. And so anyway, then eventually after enough of that happened, I decided to go to somebody to do a past life regression. Now, I'll get emotional here because I do every time. During this past life regression, that person took me back to the time of Jesus. And the first time that I met Jesus in that lifetime, and I was a root farmer working on the hillside. And I saw Jesus walking on the road between one village to another. And all of a sudden I saw a seagull fly down to Jesus and landed on his hand. And so that made me curious. So I walked down to Jesus and asked, how did you do that? And he said, it was just pure love. And then I followed him ever after that. Well, anyway, since that time, I've had many other recalls of that lifetime. I mentioned some of them in my book, but there's others that I haven't mentioned in the book, and I won't take up the time to say that now. But the one thing it did convince me also was that the Jesus, the man that was on this earth 2,000 years ago, was not the one that is a lot of time depicted in the Bible and other places as being this judgmental, controlling person. All I ever experienced was just that pure love that he was. And that gave me a total different view of Jesus, as well as a lot of the other avatars that we hear of, Buddha and Muhammad and many others, so there have been a lot of misconception of the true messages of a lot of these different spiritual masters that's been on this earth at different times.
When you talk about the different spirits inside of you, makes me think of the other day, a podcast was talking about reincarnation. I said, I can't conceive of that, but I could conceive of maybe possibility that we come back through generations. Say, my granddaughter's born and say I'm dead and I decide to go into her body. And so does my grandmother or great-great-great-grandmother, because she's gonna have a difficult life, like this tribe of spirits or something. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I conceive of, a baby born and that a new spirit not coming, but an old one gets another chance. I mean? It just seems to me like, the body should be a new spirit and not like the same old person getting 100th chance. That's just my logic.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and to just share my thoughts on all that is that we live many different lifetimes and many different people. With sometimes we're victims, sometimes we're the perpetrators. We never learn all the lessons in one lifetime. That just doesn't make sense. And a lot of times we belong to what we might call a nomad or a group consciousness, where we are a group family, however you want to explain that, where we a lot of times will come back with maybe in the same family or with some of the same people that we've had lifetimes before to rectify different situations that we might have been in as such. The other interesting things that we have to realize is that time isn't as we normally perceive it here in 3D reality. And what I mean by that is in the higher dimensions, in science usually say there's like 11 dimensions to reality, or 11 states of consciousness is another way I like to term dimensions, is that in the higher dimensions, the only time there is the present moment, or the eternal now. And so as such, we can be living in many different experiences or lifetimes all at the same time. One analogy I like to use with that is like dropping a rock into a very quiet, calm pond. And as the rock hits the water, you have these ripples that reaches out. And each ripple is a different lifetime. And all the ripples exist at the same time as you look on it. And yet we're only experiencing the ripple that we're focused on. Just like at this time, I'm focused on this lifetime or this ripple, so to speak. But yet all the other ripples are coexisting at the same time. And this is why we can have experiences with past lives as well as future lives, which I will also talk about as I get further along. Which can be exciting because, there's prodigies that maybe little kids that can play Beethoven when they're 3 years old. And it's kind of like, how in the world did they do that when I can't do it after 3 years of practicing in an adult?
Yeah, and I think maybe reincarnation is just one possibility to that. Because I think of another possibility, which I'm sure there's millions of possibilities. Another possibility I think of is I think of heaven as all gifted, as high as you could be in music and math and all those things. And when we come here, we're dumbed down. But maybe some souls bring, for whatever reason, their chemistry, their brain, their heritage, whatever reason they have a gift they come with. And so, yeah, a child that's, somebody said 4 years old, speaking 8 languages, how do they do that? I think, well, probably in heaven we spoke all those languages, and maybe they are bringing that piece of heaven. They didn't forget a piece of heaven. So, I think reincarnation, people seem to like grasp on that, and I'm not sold, and that's why I'm just trying to like understand. And then I think too, as you're talking, a medium I had on a podcast the other day, she like, well, you want to give me a reading? She named 3 people in my family that's with me. One was my grandpa on my mom's side. One was an uncle on my mom's side. And then she says, and there's one on your dad's side that's coming through. And she gave the name, and that's an uncle. And I, of course, didn't tell her. But in my memoir, in the beginning, I talk about being molested by a group of uncles and older cousins when I was a very small child, and he was one of them. So I'm thinking, okay, reincarnation, are these people like living in my soul, or are they around me? It's like, how do we know? Like, are they just popping in? That's what she's picking up. Are they following me around, like maybe trying to change our family's legacy by, helping me along? I don't know. I don't understand any of this. And people like you can read these things and study and read, and now you have all the answers. And then somebody like me is like, all I have is questions.
Yeah. Well, nobody has all the answers. I'll be the first to admit that. But as I see it, as the more we learn and awaken and have experiences, the more extensive our understanding of all that is. And that brings a lot of relief and peace to mind, for me at least, and many other people, because all of these experiences we have, or lifetimes, are really just dreams or illusions that our consciousness have created, because back home, if you want to call it heaven or whatever, we are just pure love as such. And we come to Earth and to other planets, for that matter, to have these experiences, to grow and to expand our awareness of who we are.
And in the years, a lot of us have had life review. Right. And, at 5 years old, it wasn't a life review, but it was this memory brought into me to help make me understand, oh, I'm not alive like I think I'm dead. And then 20 years later, on a second NDE, I had the whole tunnel and heaven experience. And I was taken just into the future, just a little bit, and shown what my boy's life would be like if I didn't return. And so it seems to me, just from those experiences, because I have to come to some kind of conclusion, it seems like all of our experiences are recorded.
Right.
Because when somebody has a life review, they usually see it not through their eyes like I did. Like also too, my life review was I showed God every abuse I've ever encountered, to show God, this is why I can't leave my boys down there on earth without me. Showed him, because it's dangerous. Look at all these abuse happening to me. I can't leave my boys down there. But most people, their life review is they're shown their life, like Daniel Brinkley. He was shown how he acted in the war. He laughed when somebody was killed, or beat up a kid and laughed. And he's seen how they hurt. He's seen the other side of it. And so it seems like, and then you say illusion. I'm like, wait a minute. These seem to be so important. They seem to be stamped like on this timeline of our life. And when we die, we are shown this like a movie. And I picture, this is in my imagination, but I picture, because of all that I've read and heard and experienced, I picture like people are in heaven, like we sit here and watch TV with our feet up, like they're watching our life review. They get to see our whole life, how we lived it. It's like a real lifetime movie for them. And then so to say it's an illusion, to me, it sounds like to say it doesn't matter, where I feel like the opposite's true. I feel like it matters so much. Like one guy said that in his life review, he was shown how a simple thing he thought was like padding his expense account wasn't a big deal. And he was shown that was very wrong. And somebody else in their life review was shown that he was in a hurry to do something. He had a bucket of water and he saw a tree needed help. It was kind of like dry and withering. And he went ahead and dumped that on that tree. And God just loved that. Thought that was beautiful, that he saw that, and he took the time to care for that. And I remember another guy said his sister and him were scared one night. Their parents were fighting real bad, domestic violence thing, and he, as a teenage boy, went in to his teenage sister and put his arm around her and comforted her. She was so scared, and he felt like I'm too cool for this. I really don't want to do this. This is my sister, yuck. But at the same time, he wanted to comfort her, and God showed him how important that was, that he did that he comforted her. And so, when I hear that, like I say, I feel like I'm picking on you, and I'm not. Because I hear what you're saying all the time. And I just have so many questions, because then I think of all these other things I've heard and that I've experienced, I'm thinking, but it seems like it's not an illusion. It seems like it's so important. Like right now, how I treat you is so important. How you treat me is so important. It's not like it's illusion. This isn't really happening. It doesn't really matter. You'll just get another lifetime. Don't worry about dying because you'll just get to do it over 100 times more. And so it seems to me when I hear you say these things, because I hear them a lot in the that they and people that think they're awakened, right? That I say think that because there is another side here watching and listening to what you and others say. And that because I mean I see it in my comments. People say, like I had somebody on there like, Pegi, that's not Christian. And I'm subscribing to you because that's not Christian. Well, I didn't. Because that woman gave me a reading the other day. Pegi, that's not Christian. That's witchcraft. And according to the Bible, it says this and that. And
Right.
and
Well,
so we all don't think like this, and we all don't think like
right.
me or that lady that's quoting the Bible and getting upset. And so is it illusion? Is it illusion? Because I know you believe that. But in my heart, I feel like it's so important. Like if I go to town today, like who I encounter is I could just blow it off and be rude to somebody and not even think about it. That could have been so important to that person. That could have really crushed them. Or if I was really kind, that could really change their day and maybe how they react. And, and it seems you say we're all one, but to me, if we're all one, then it's what we do and interact is so important. And to say it's an illusion, it's like, to me, am I hearing it wrong? Because to me, it sounds like, well, it doesn't matter. And our life doesn't matter if it's a reincarnation.
Well, yes and no is the best way to answer that. And I need to explain that a little bit better then. It does matter in one sense of the word. It's kind of like you're in a play and you're playing a certain role and somebody else playing another role. Of course, how you react to that other person in that role will seem very real and meaningful, regardless if you react in a good way or a bad way. And yet at the same time, you're not really that character in the play or the movie, but you're the character, the consciousness sitting in the auditorium watching the movie or the play. And so how you interact in this play or movie makes a difference in that sense of the word. It ultimately, it doesn't, because, okay, it does make a difference why you're in the movie or in the play, because it changes the outcome of the play or the movie. And of course, we're in the movie because we want to grow and learn and become more aware. And that's why we play both the victim and the perpetrator in different lifetimes so that we can learn and grow from it. And as you were saying, we all have the Akashic records or the Hall of Records, where all the memories of our experiences in these lifetimes are kept. And there are some people that can actually access those records and tell you, what you were in a past life or what you were supposed to learn and things like that. And so it's kind of like a dichotomy. It does make a difference, and yet it doesn't make a difference ultimately.
Maybe in time, like it made a difference at the time.
Yeah.
But, once you're dead, does it still make a difference? You know what I mean? So if someone chopped my arm off when I was 3 years old, it's going to make a difference all through my life. But once I go on the other side, it's not going to make a difference because I'm going to have 2 arms.
Right. Well, that's a good way of looking at it. Yes.
I don't know. I just like to pick things apart and
Well,
I like trying to understand them.
The best way you can teach others is to explain things as questions arise. And that's what I do in my Facebook group a lot is I share my own personal experiences, my personal understanding, as well as have other people share theirs. And they don't always agree, and that's fine. The key is as long as you're respectful to each other and your comments. And
what does it mean when you say awakened and aware?
Okay, awakened means that you realize that this lifetime or any of the lifetimes we have is just an illusion or a dream that God created for our understanding or growth or experiences. And that ultimately we are just pure love and connected to all that is, which some call God or source.
If you believe that, you're awakened.
Yes, to some degree.
Okay.
There are some people that think they're awakened and yet do not live their life as if they are awakened.
So
and
somebody's judging, like as people at church would judge. That's a
Right.
sinner and that's a good person. So it seems like the spiritual people are making these lines.
Right.
You're awakened, you're not. You're aware, you're not. You know, so here we go, the black and white. The light and the dark.
Instead of saying anybody is fully awakened, I don't think so. We're all in the process of awakening. I'd rather put it that way because, I'd be the first to admit there's a lot I don't know. And, I don't live a perfect life, even though I don't live a terrible life either. But I'm in the process of becoming more aware of the truth of who we are. And in the process of doing that, I tried to live my life as that awakened, loving soul as such. And of course, because I'm in a human body and all, I don't necessarily live a perfect life as such, even though I don't live a terrible life either. But it's when, but the key is to stay out of judgment about all of this, everybody is where they're supposed to be at. So if somebody isn't aware in a certain way, you don't put them down because of it. You just accept them for where they're at and try to be respectful and loving to them regardless,
Now I
If
got a
you're
question
not
for you.
What?
Is truth an illusion?
Is truth is illusion is what you're
Is
asking.
truth an illusion? I'm asking because I don't know. I've been asking myself that lately because I thought I knew the truth and I thought the truth was all that matters. Jesus is the truth, the light, and the way. Okay. I'm a Jesus freak. I'm a Christian,
Okay.
But then I come to hear so many different people on my podcast and I love them and I listen to them and I'm attentive to them. And then I'm thinking, it's truth and illusion. Because what I believe is the truth and what you believe is the truth is not the same. And what my husband might believe is the truth is not the same. And truth, so you think of the wars that we've had and people that have been killed and some hung and guillotine and all this stuff because of the word truth.
Okay, I'll explain that. My best understanding of the truth is love. Love is the truth. But there's many paths to the truth or to a reality. I like to use the mountain as an example. Let's say the top of the mountain is God or the truth. And there are many paths to the top of the mountain. I was raised Catholic. My parents were very strict Catholic as such. And one time I actually, when I left the church, they were upset and thought that they did something wrong. And I said, well, instead of following that same path that you guys are following to the top of the mountain, I'm flying around the mountain, taking a little here and a little there, getting a better view. But also I mentioned to them that even the two of you that are both Catholic do not step in the same footprints of each other. And so because of their personal experiences and thoughts, they see things even different from each other, even though they're taking the same route. There might be some other people that take the route of the Buddhist way or Muhammad or any of the other paths. And it doesn't matter what path you take. What's interesting is you get closer and closer to the top of the mountain, the paths get closer and closer in similarity of the truth. And so, whatever path somebody takes, it doesn't really matter. What I find interesting, having been raised Catholic, you read the lives of saints and things like that when I was younger. And if you really read some of the deeper thoughts of some of these saints, you realize that their beliefs changed as they became more aware themselves, which was similar to the beliefs of maybe a Buddhist or some other monk or some other practicing organization as such. So yeah, we all start wherever we're at on the path, and it doesn't truly matter what path we take. Ultimately, it's just the experience of trying to find the truth, as you would say.
I just see like a lot of spiritual, what I would say, people that claim to be spiritual, they on Facebook groups and on my wall and stuff, they'll say things often like they hate religion. And that because they're spiritual. And I'm like, well, why can't you still love religious people? Why do you have to hate religion or hate religious people? Oh, they're judgmental. I went to church one time and they were mean to me and blah, blah, blah. Like, there we go. It's like we're finding a divide. If this spiritual, these theories, spiritual theories, these people that say they're spiritual and are reading these books and things and come to these conclusions of awareness and awakening, but yet it seems to me like just an outsider watching it all, it just seems to me like they are getting more like the religious to where you can't think like this and this, or you're not a part of us.
Right.
And that's what they ended up not liking. And then to me, just an outsider looking, it seems to me like that's what they're becoming, because they will cut people off. They will be mean to them. If you are Catholic, if you are pro-life, if you are not allowed to associate with us, because therefore we believe all these things about you. Say if somebody's a Trump supporter and somebody's over here, they're liberal and they're just like, oh, we hate you and we're going to be mean. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm hoping that somehow by being open and talking about this stuff, I'm optimistic. I'm a fool that somehow we can build a bridge to where we understand each other better, than maybe take down them walls of just because I'm a Jesus freak, just because I was Catholic for a lot of years doesn't mean I no longer respect the Catholic religion, because I do. And I respect all the Christian churches my grandma took me to, and I respect the spiritual people too, to a limit. I mean, I have my limit too, where I put my wall down and say, no, that's harmful to others. I don't want no part of that. And so it seems like instead of the way I grew up, maybe you grew up like in the Catholic Church, things were simple. You went to church, they told you what to think and you thought it. And now that we have the internet, and then we can research and we can access these books and these ideas, and it confuses everything.
Yeah, like I always think is that, even though I don't believe in the Catholic Church as it is now, especially the dogmas and all that stuff, I don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, because it did give me a base to start from. And that's what we're all doing, is just growing and expanding our awareness, regardless of where our start was. There was a benefit for all of it, no matter where you started from.
I benefited from every church my grandma took me to, and I benefited from the Catholic Church when I was with my ex. I went to Catholic church like 20 years. And, my husband's family, his big Catholic family, and, his parents I adored. And I learned a lot. I learned how to be a better person, to be a good girl. I learned, and that has benefited my life more than anything, because I didn't go to drugs. I didn't go into stealing. I didn't go into bad stuff. I always wanted to be a good girl. And I got that from all of those religions. And I don't go to church anymore. And I said something before and it stuck with me. I said, I don't go to church anymore because I am church.
Right. I mean, that's the biggest difference between Christian beliefs and, let's say, Eastern philosophy, is that most Christian-based things always think of God and everything outside of ourselves, where Eastern philosophy talks about it comes from within. And the more that I've learned and grown over the years, I realize that it really is all of an inside job, basically. Actually, some of modern physics right now, one of the books I just read a while back, just not too long ago, basically said there is nothing outside of ourselves. It's all within us. The reality, even the 3D reality we see out there, really truly only exists inside of our consciousness as such. I mean, there's a lot of, I really, being a natural scientist myself, I honor a lot of science. Not that it has all the answers, but I believe it does have a basis for a lot of things. And as such, I have blended physics, or modern physics, and metaphysics and spirituality together. And I think a lot of people nowadays do, that have studied all these different modalities, so to speak, because they
Love
do
what you
back
said
each
is
other
an
up.
inside job. I love that. That's a good saying.
Right. And like you say, not to criticize or be judgmental of those that claim that, that they have the truth because they're spiritual or they're new thought or whatever. If they don't behave in that manner, then they're just speaking lies in a sense of the word.
It's true.
There's an old saying goes, it isn't what you say, but how you act that has more impact on another person. And so, I'll admit, in the earlier years, I spent a lot of time reading and having experiences, but as life had gone on, I realized I do the most impact on other people by how I live my life. And by doing that is by being kind and respectful to others, loving others, and all those other things that you might expect,
Makes me think of a sign I used to hang down the bar my husband used to go to. It said, my ex-husband, it said something like, tact is telling someone to go to hell and making them feel happy to be on their way.
I hadn't heard that one, but it's a good one. Kind of like a joke I heard a while back. It was talking about reincarnation. And the guy said, I have been so lucky because every time I'm reincarnated, I'm always born in the one and only correct religion at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, because I don't understand the science part, what you were saying. I'm curious to what you learned from the quantum physics or whatever,
Yeah,
how it involves in this. Because I watch that stuff and I listen, because I love to hear really smart people talk, like it's way above my head. And I only catch a couple % of what they're saying, but I will just hang in there. And I'm intrigued by it. I cannot stand to hear a bunch of drunks talking. You know what I mean? They're not saying anything. They're speaking English, but I could care less. But a bunch of smart people, like I think the quantum physics stuff, like this stuff I watch on TV, I'll just sit there and stare at it. And I'm trying to get it in there. So what do you make? How does that support our spirit?
Well, I think for me, it helps confirm or gives validity to personal experiences I've had that is outside of the normal 3D reality, like out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences or spiritual transformative experiences like the one I had, or even future life experiences. The physical world or 3D world can explain those things, I mean, from a spiritual perspective, there's an answer to it all. But science or modern physics explains a lot of that in its own way. The mathematical equations, I'm about as dumb about that as the next person, because I do not have that understanding mathematically how these things mean this or that. But the impact of what those equations and other things mean, I do understand for the most part, and I find it very fascinating and confirming with my own personal experiences. I think part of the thing is, unless you believe something is possible, you're probably not going to experience it. And so some people ask, well, I'll give you an example. This kind of goes into science and stuff. Most people believe that this lifetime is all there is, and once we die, that's it. And yet modern physics believe that there's multiverses out there. even parallel universes that are coinciding with our universe. Well, a year or so ago, I had this experience where I left my body, an out-of-body experience, and I went to a parallel universe. And in that universe, I went back roughly 30 years or so and was in the house that I grew up in Burlington, Iowa. Well, when I got there, my parents were there and some of my siblings. Well, at this time, in this universe, my parents had died 15 and 17 years ago. Well, in this other universe, which, like all out-of-body experiences, you're as fully conscious there as you are in this universe or at this time. Me talking to you, I'm very conscious of that. Well, in this other universe, I was aware that I had traveled to this other parallel universe, and seeing my mom and dad, who I hadn't hugged for 17 years, I asked my dad, "Can I give you a hug?" And he matter of factly said, "Well, sure, like, what's the big deal? I see you all the time." And so I gave him a physical hug. Well, that brought tears to me because I hadn't hugged him physically in 17 years. And yet this was my consciousness, this was my reality. And science backs this up in a large way as such. If somebody had never had that experience, I have no way of convincing them that this exists, that our consciousness can travel like that. Same way with out-of-body experiences in other ways, as such. They actually say about 10% of the world population have had at least one out-of-body experience in their lifetime.
I have heard some of these science stuff say that science actually does not dispute out-of-body experiences at all. They don't dispute it. It's a fact. The near-death experience, they want to say is illusion, is this and that. But say out-of-body, oh yeah, it's been proven. No need sense talking about it. When I had my second NDE at 25 years old, I didn't think of it at the time. As I'm older, I sit back and analyze it. There was like 4 of me, because when I first got in the bright white light, I was invisible. I felt just like me. I just had no body. Mm-hmm. And then as I started talking to God, he's in front of a panel of people, it's just all a faint outline. And then another point, when I was telling my life review, when I was telling all the abuses I went through, I realized every time I remember it, it's the exact same way. But I'm seeing it as this invisible me watching this physical me across the room screaming all this stuff. And I'm like, there was 2 me. There was invisible me, and then there's a physical me that I could see that is telling God all this stuff. And then there is a third me, because then I see, and maybe it was still the second. Oh, this sounds crazy. And then I see Jesus from behind, and then I see a physical me from behind. So if that second me moved and I was there, I don't know, but that's like a third me. And then all of a sudden we drop, and we're now down, we drop out of heaven, the bright white light. And now we're over top the trailer where my boys were, and we're in the future. Because I told God if he could show that my kids would be better off without me for whatever reason, I agreed to stay. But if not, I begged to return. So they were like, okay, apparently, because next thing I know, there's Jesus, like, let's go, and I'm right beside him when we drop down, and we're atop the trailer. And it's at night, and see the trailer roof, then all of a sudden it's like there's no roof. We see straight into the bedroom, and I see my boys, and they're discussing the fact that mom has died. So it's not that far in the future, but it's in the future, because they're discussing that I died, and I'm still at the hospital. I have not died, not been told that I died. And so they're discussing the fact that mom's died, and my middle one said, I don't care that you say mom is dead. I want her back, and I want her back right now. And I felt his pain. I retracted, and then I'm back in heaven, and I'm in front of God, still sitting there in his panel of people, and it's still just this outline is all I see in this white light. But now Jesus is sitting beside God, and I'm crumbled at his feet. And I think my imagination pictured what Jesus' feet would look like, bottom white robe woven, and, the brown sandals. I think, from my Christian upbringing, I pictured that's what, because I knew it was at Jesus' feet, and I'm sobbing. And so I put my hands up, and this is the first time that I feel I'm no longer that invisible orb looking at me across from there, looking at me getting ready to drop down with Jesus, being over top have this awareness of what's going on down there, that we're looking down, and then I'm back because I see my hands, physical hands come up. That's the only time in heaven I saw like me enclosed in my physical body. I see my physical hands come up and I say, who else will teach them about you? And I'm back. And so as you're saying that, I'm thinking, you say multiple universe, but I'm thinking we can be all things and on all places all at once. And during my first NDE at 5 years old, I had hard time understanding to tell my NDE because I was in more places than one at once, because the angel had said, don't go yet. If they find you soon, you might go back. And so I knew I was not supposed to leave. I was hovering over the pond. I was not supposed to leave. But then I got bored and I wanted to go. So I went this way and went to that town for a while. I went down the highway and I went to the other town for a while. And then I woke up hanging on my brother's shoulder. But yet I never knew, but I felt I never left hovering over the center of that pond. And I didn't understand it. And it finally clicked on me one day, you was in more places than one. And so that's hard to communicate. And then what you're saying, multi-universes, maybe that is a word that would describe that. And another thing I wanted to say, you were talking about the science experiments. That one, you probably know what it's called, and I don't remember right now what it's called, where they're shooting something at this wall. It's the best I can explain it. But they found that it changes when it's observed.
Oh yeah, that's a split. Yeah.
See, I find that fascinating.
A split something or other. I can't think of the word right now, but basically it all has to do with observation. It's either a particle or it's a wave.
Yeah.
And it depends on, it's kind of like the cat in the box, is it alive or dead? You don't know until you open the box, basically.
And I think that's why my little brain thinks that must be why we leave heaven and come here to live a life, to be observed. We have this physical body, we can do these physical things, but yet at the same time, I feel we're always observed by God. Now, I mean, a lot of people don't feel that way. I know Christians do.
But here's another way to explain this that I've heard a lot, which seems to make sense, is we are aspects of God's consciousness and have these illusionary dreams or experiences that we call lifetimes. And the reason why we do is so God can come to experience itself, or that oneness consciousness can experience itself through all the different experiences that we as consciousness itself creates as such. And
that would lead us to believe that God is like the cosmos and he could never be a body,
right?
And we are bodies, but yet again, God can be anything he wants to be. I mean, he created everything, from the mountain to the ocean to an ant, and you and I, and this hair on my head, he can do anything. So if he wants to be a person, like an individual, he could, but instead we got Jesus, we got his son.
Here's another way of looking at all this.
We could go on all day.
Yeah, we are like drops of water in the ocean. And while we're on this earth, we visualize ourselves as this drop of water, and God is this whole ocean. But the key of awakening is to come to the realization that we are also the whole ocean, having this experience as a drop of water in the ocean. And this is kind of a understanding I've come to more recently, is the best experience is to be both at once. And what I mean by that is come into the realization and experience of being God or all that is, and yet also have those experience of these dreams or illusions, however you want to call them, on all these planets or universes or wherever you want to experience them, and be able to move back and forth from the two realities, if you want to call it that. The difference is when you become aware of that, then you realize you do create your own reality or your life experiences, where most people aren't aware of that. And as such, they don't have the means or the abilities to focus their lives in the direction they want. They become reactionary, in other words, and react to what life throws at them.
I mean, like, so would you like tell a child, like, oh, this is all an illusion, nothing you do here matters, it's not real, you know, and you're just going to live your life over? I mean, or are you going to say, like Daniel Brinkley, he said he was told in his near-death experience that we're powerful spiritual beings, you know, or you want to say, no, child, you are a powerful spiritual being. Everything you do here matters, and every interaction you have, and it's all recorded, and you're being watched by God, and this will be all played out when in your life review when you die. You know, to me, it's like a passive, you know, way of living life. Like, it's an illusion. It doesn't matter. It's not real. You're just going to, you know, reincarnate and live again, or the other. To me, it seems like very different outcomes.
It's not either or, it's a blend, and depending on where that person is at in their awareness. You wouldn't talk to a little child about the birds and the bees and the true
It's just an example.
Yeah, but at the same time, so you find out where that person is in their awareness or their age or maturity, and then you talk in a way that is appropriate for them at that stage. I'm talking to you today in a stage that is a little more deeper than what most people on this earth is at this time.
See, that's a judgment.
True.
That's a judgment. That would be like a Catholic saying, those Christians that go to that Methodist church over there, they don't go to communion, or they don't go to confession, they don't whatever, you know, the Catholic religion is the oldest religion and it's the true religion, you know, they're not going to heaven. Or them going over there and pointing to them Catholics across the road going to that church on Sunday morning. Well, those people, they think they can do whatever they want, and as long as they go to confession, they're saved. And then you say, well, I'm not judging any of it, I'm just pointing out.
I know, but you're misinterpreting what I'm saying. I'm not saying any of them, no matter where they're at on their awareness, is gonna go to hell or go to heaven as such.
Do you believe in heaven and hell, or do you believe this reincarnation cycle? I don't know.
The only hell there is our own creation. Heaven is.
But see, you say that, right? You say there's no hell, right? Unless we create it in our mind. And then Howard Storr would come in here, and some others I've had on my podcast that say they were in hell and tell you exactly what hell was like. Then they felt the fire and they was bit by the demons.
That was their experience.
Mm-hmm. And so is this experience real, or is this imaginary? Is this happening at all?
It's all imaginary in an illusion.
I have it on recording.
Huh?
But I have it on recording.
Well, yeah.
And it'll be around for decades, you know.
Right.
It'll go out there on the web, and it'll be out there forever. And so does it exist or does it not exist? Does right now what we're doing exist more because it's recorded and more people can continue to view it? Or say, like your life, say when you're dead, are you still remembered by your loved ones? And as long as they remember you, we're still here. Or when they stop remembering us, when our couple generations go by, and like I don't know my great grandparents. I never met them. I heard about them. I don't know them. You know, are they gone? Is when the last person stops remembering them. You know, what's real?
It exists in the present now, but what exists now may not be exactly the same in the next existence at the present moment.
But if somebody's reincarnated, say I'm reincarnated, and say I'm sitting here telling you I was reincarnated, and I was a gypsy 100 years ago, and I'm going to tell you about that whole life. That's not in the now. But so how can I tell you it happened? Did it exist at all?
Okay.
I'm difficult.
Here's another analogy I like to use about time. I don't know if it clearly answers it or not, but maybe it'll help some. It's like if a book was written about the Civil War in 1900, and if you read it, it says this, this, and that. Okay, there's another book written about the Civil War in 2020. Now, what's written about the Civil War in 2020 isn't going to be exactly the same as the book written in 1900.
Like the Bible.
Yeah. And as such, which story is real and which isn't?
Yeah.
Well, in 1900, that story was real. In 2020, this other story is real. And yet, in a sense, you're changing the past as well as the future, you know. It's all an illusion in a sense of the word. So that's when you're living the illusion, it doesn't seem like an illusion. Let's put it that way.
But that's your opinion that it's illusion.
Yeah, that's my opinion or my understanding at this point in time. It may change as time goes on.
Like when a woman finds out she's pregnant, she doesn't know that baby's there. And then she starts to show or has other indications that baby's there. Oh, now that baby's there. It comes into her awareness.
Right.
It depends on when that baby comes into her awareness. The baby's still there from the moment of conception. Whether she doesn't know it until she's 9 months and gets a bellyache and goes to the hospital, crap, I didn't know I was pregnant, you know. The baby was there all along.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to the science. You know, is it a particle or is it a wave? Well, it depends on the observer or the consciousness that is the observer. We are not our thoughts. We are just consciousness itself having the thoughts that pass through our consciousness.
And if there's an observer, there's an awareness.
Right. Right.
And so it's not imagination. If there's a conscious awareness that something exists, and like I said, okay, this example of pregnancy, even if you're not conscious of it, it can still exist. Like there could be a spirit standing right beside me, and I don't know it's there, but it can still exist through, you know, another dimension that we can't see. I could have a whole bunch of them right behind me right now, and I don't know they're there.
Right.
I don't know. It's my crazy head. This is why I stared out the window at school all the time, instead of paying attention to what the teacher was saying. Just thoughts go and questions. Nobody ever has answers for me, satisfy me.
Well, you know, part of this whole life is just the experience and the journey, you know. I don't think we ever fully arrive anywhere, but it's all about the journey as such. And I know one time when I was talking to my dad years ago when I was telling him about my understanding of life and reality, he asked me, why are you even interested in learning that, you know? It's like, just accept what is, you know, or something to that effect, you know. And it's just because who I am. I'm an explorer, you know. One time somebody asked me if you could be anybody in history, who would you be? And I said Lewis and Clark, because they were explorers, you know. And that's why I liked the original Star Trek shows series, because they were always exploring new life, new realities as such, you know, as such.
My experience in the tunnel in my second NDE was like a Star Wars show. That's what anything I could relate to it going through the tunnel was like, this is Star Wars. Because it used to be on after school every day when I got home. I didn't really pay much attention, but it was always on. And it was the only thing I could rate, because it was like I was in this invisible tunnel. I mean, like it had some like walls to it, but yet I could see through them, and I could tell that I was shot like a rocket. And when you watch on TV a rocket getting ready to blast off, that pressure, that noise, that's what I heard and that's what I felt. But yet, as I was whizzing through it, I could see I was going through what I call galaxy and galaxy and galaxy. And there was like these, I call them rings, because there was like speed bumps. There was these things in tunnels I was going through. I felt like I must be another galaxy. You know, my limited understanding of science, you know, it was just like I must be going through galaxy and galaxy. Just this feeling of shot way, way, way up through space. And at first I thought, I want to run away. How can I get out of here? I gotta get back to my kids. I can't die. I got little kids at home. And then I realized, oh no, I'm way, way too far out. I'm never going to find my way back. And so then it stopped. It was like loud and bumpy and whizzing. And then all of a sudden it stopped. And it's just the opposite, because now I'm perfectly still, perfectly quiet. There's no me. And I don't think there was in a tunnel either. I wasn't paying attention. And my first thought was, wow, it's real. The whole Bible, Jesus, God, even though I hadn't seen anybody yet. It's just that I was in heaven, even though I didn't see the landscape people now talk about, with heaven. And then Ron was going to Sunday school. I didn't pay attention to what they see in heaven. And my thought of was heaven was like, I hope that's true. That was about it. I hope that's true. I couldn't picture it. I couldn't imagine it. And a lot of Christians too, Sunday school, they taught that we don't go to heaven when we die until we all go, like the end of time, then everybody's lifted out of the grave and go. I thought that was what happened, but I just died and bam, I'm there. And I thought, oh, wow, the whole God, Bible, Jesus thing, it's real. It's all real. And then I started to see the outline of people and stuff. But so those words real, and going through the tunnel, every sentence I thought started with I am going way through, space. I am so sorry, my children. I didn't want to leave you. And I am da da da. And then when I got there, and then oh my goodness, white space. And then I know that I am in heaven, and I know it is real. And so, and the times in my life where voices have come in and said something, they were as real, more real than anything. And they have proven themselves over time how real they were and how they saved my life. It's like, for example, when I was 16, I was out in the smoking area, and I come inside and something was starting to talk to me, say, stop being out here hurting yourself, drugs, alcohol, go in, get a warm meal, do something to help yourself. I said, hurt yourself. And I walked through, I started listening to this voice. It was just like guiding me. And then it was in here, but loud. And then as soon as I walked through the door, I seen who's my husband now. And over time, it started telling me things, whenever he was around. It was telling me, this is what goodness looks like. Don't approach, just observe. And that I had to go and become a better person first. And someday we would be together. Well, it was 20 years later after my divorce of 16 years. And then I was divorced like maybe a year or so. And then, so then the voice led me to where he was that night and led us together. And those voices at the time, I thought, I'm a mental person, I'm gonna have to go get therapy. But as I get older, I'm realizing how real those voices were that guided me, that they weren't imagination, they weren't a mental illness, they weren't that I was nuts. They led me through my life. And to go become a better person, what that meant was, I was 16 at the time, when I was 18, I married the Catholic guy. And so there was like 20 years of going to Catholic church. And so his family, although it was big family alcoholics, and his mom was mentally ill and stuff, I just love them to death. But they're the one where I learned how to go learn, become a better person. That's where I learned it. Because I was no longer going to church with my grandma, but they had me going to church every Sunday and every holiday and trying to be a good person and going to confession. And so I learned through that religion. And so, I'll never knock any religion. And I just get really hurt when I see people putting down people that are religious. And even I was in IANS and ISGO, and Chuck Swedrock said during one of our recorded trainings for ISGO, I hate fundamentalist Christians. I had to look up what that meant. What's fundamentalist Christian? And I'm like, why would he say that? Why would he say he hates religion? And I've seen other speakers IANS has, and I've heard their talks, and they're saying they hate religion. They're against religion. I'm like, I don't know what's happening here.
See, we all have the experiences we have because it's best for us on our personal journey as such. And it's just like people that have near-death experiences. Somebody who's Christian might end up meeting Jesus up in heaven, where somebody who's Buddhist might meet Buddha up there in heaven. So it has to do with your background and your belief system.
But I have read in studies that study NDEs a lot, across the board, Jesus is the most seen religious figure, even though God and Jesus religious figures are not seen, only like 10%. So, I was in that 10% category. Even though they're not seen that often across the board, Jesus is the most seen across the world, even people that don't believe in Jesus. And so I hear people quote that a lot, that if you, Buddha and whatever, if that's your religion, that's what you see. And, that makes sense that that's what you would see, because on the other side, we don't have physical. And so God has to create all of our scenery. And so he's not going to create a language in Japanese, talk, unless you know Japanese, to talk to you and say, you're in heaven now and you need to go over here, you need to do this. They're not going to say it in Japanese unless you know Japanese. And if I'm familiar with God and Jesus, that's what I'm going to see. So I get that, you know, and if they're say, well, hey, you know, this person coming up to heaven now, they believe in Buddha. So let's show them a Buddha right now until they get comfortable. And then we'll show who knows what's out there past all that.
Right.
But they have that technology. And that's why I believe in the realness of it all. I don't believe in the illusion. And you're fine to believe what you want, you know, but in my mind, I believe in the realness because it's just, you know, what I've experienced, the realness of it all and the truth of it all. And then I see a lot of theories coming through and saying a lot of things, and it's causing a lot of divide and fighting. And all I want to say, I guess, and I don't control nothing, it's just my opinion, is like, if I can love you and you can love me, and we can and say, hey, she thinks like this and I don't think like that, and I just love him and he thinks like that, and let's be friends, you know, and let's just keep talking and trying to understand what's going on, because none of us know, and we won't know till we get there. But people like you and I that just have these itching questions, and we just can't stop picking at the surface and trying to peek through and see what's going on, we're just going to keep doing that.
Well, right. And, you know, it gets back to the beginning of what is the truth. And the only truth that is universally true, no matter where you go, is love. And we are the vibration of love. And we play all these games, if you want to call it that, you know, real or imaginary, it doesn't matter. You know, if you're experiencing it, it's real at the time for that person, and you can't deny that for that person by any means. It's another way I like to look at all of this, because I've been on this journey my whole life, is that at this point, I believe I'm on the right path. I agree that there's a lot I don't know because the mystery is beyond our comprehension. But at the same time, either this path is taking me in the right direction or nothing at all makes sense. You know, and the nothing at all makes sense is too depressing to go that route. So
yeah, and if you're too strong in your convictions, then that's when we have wars.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, yeah. And, you know, hopefully that's where, you know, one of my missions on earth is to help bring oneness or unity to humanity. And it's only via that route that we'll do away with war. Because once we realize that we're all interconnected in one at a true essence of who we are, then whatever we do, we'll do for the good of the whole. And as long as we believe that we're separate from that whole, I am, or God, whatever you want to call it, we will still do whatever we think is best for us without regard for the other. And we'll continue down this route that we've been on for eons of time. Yeah, there are many different beliefs out there, and that twists and turns this way and that way. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter what route the person takes. It's their route, and you honor them for where they're at, and you honor yourself for where you are at as such.
Very well said. Well, I really have enjoyed this. I hope you have as well. I haven't offended you. I asked you so many questions.
I have a pretty tough skin, so
I thought you did. I can tell, kind of gauge like who I can ask and kind of be bold and go more forward than other people I know. Like, oh, I wouldn't want to upset them. You know, I can tell you could handle it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, you know, like I'll be the first to admit I don't have all the answers, but I do like.
I don't either.
I like exploring it all and having conversations with others. You know, I've had enough of my own personal experiences that are beyond this world that I know those are true. And yet I've heard of other experiences that people have had, like near-death experiences, which I have not had personally, but I have no reason not to believe their story because, you know, I know mine are true. And so why wouldn't theirs be true too? And so as such, I try to take in everybody understanding of their reality and kind of blend it all together and share what I think is beneficial for others and share that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Me too.
Okay.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day and have a
Okay.
wonderful Thanksgiving.
Yeah, same to you. And thanks for having me on and sharing my thoughts, at least
Yeah.
on all of this. And as I always tell other people, whatever resonates with you, take in, and what doesn't, just
Right.
set it aside, because nothing anyone says is gonna be completely accepted by any other person per se.
Yeah. And there's
'Cause
no
we
reason to
all-
get mad over any of it. Like a
No.
lot of people in the comments get so mad. I'm like, why are you getting mad? We're just
Right.
talking. We're just trying to figure it out.
Right. Yeah, I've been talking about these things for years to people, and I go to any level of depth to it, depending on where their interest lies or not. Even in my own family, like I said, I was raised Catholic, and all but my twin brothers went in different directions. And so for the most part, I don't share a lot of this stuff with them because it doesn't get me anywhere as
Right.
such. And the hardest
They want to
thing
talk
was,
about the ball game or something.
right, just secular things or simple things. The hardest thing about my book was giving it to my brothers and sisters, because they already have an opinion about me, where so a stranger, I don't have that much trouble doing it with if they're really interested in what I have to share in the book and stuff. If nothing else, I always consider myself a Johnny Appleseed type of guy, where I plant seeds of thoughts with people, and if they germinate and grow, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine too. I just keep moving on and planting more seeds, And
When I told my mom I was writing my memoir, I didn't tell her anything else, just that. And she said, well, I'll look for it in the fiction section. And she says, I bet I sound like Mother of the Year. And then after it was published, she got a copy. I went to her house, kind of scared. And I'm like, what'd you think? And she said, it's true. She says, I forgot about a lot of that stuff. She doesn't know how you remembered it all. She says, I forgot about a lot of it till I read it. She says, it's true. She says, but I wish you hadn't done it.
Yeah.
Because it embarrassed some people and, embarrassed my brother. And
Yeah.
she didn't want his kids reading it. One of his daughters read it. The truth is the truth, and my sister, just talked to one of my sisters like a few months ago, and I said, did you read it? No, but I'm not going to. And she says, all of us had a horrific childhood, and we all saw it from a different viewpoint.
Right.
And she said, and I've always hated you. I said, well, thank you for the closure. I always had a hope that someday you'd love me. So thank you for that closure. I know that door's never been opened.
Yeah. Well, like when I gave out my book, I offered it to my 5 brothers and sisters, and all of them took it except for my one sister, who was a fundamentalist, and she wouldn't even accept the book, let alone read it, And as far as I know, only one of my sisters read the book, and she was confused by it because she was probably closest to my understanding of spirituality and reality of any of my brothers and sisters, but yet it was beyond her comprehension for the most part. So anyway, like I mentioned earlier, I do offer my ebook free to anyone who's interested in it. I just send me an email address on my personal message Facebook page, and I'll email it to you. And then I do sell the paperback copy for $10 plus whatever the postage is. I think it's $4 United States. If out of the country is quite a bit more, but and if you don't want to go that route, you can get it on Amazon or some other books and stuff.
Okay.
And,
I'll make sure I put those links down there for you.
Okay.
In the description.
So anyway, I'll let
you
you go, but thanks again, and have a great Thanksgiving and all of that for the rest of your life, and I'll meet you somewhere else then.
You can live the illusion, I'll live the real.
Yeah. Okay.
So next time I smash my thumb, I'm like, this is illusion. I'll think of you.
Okay.
Okay, it's been fun. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.